this attack their immune system. So, man, it's about life or death. When you start thinking about sports, what he can do, how the Cowboys, when you talk about long-term paralysis, when you hear Slayer's story, how he lost the feeling in his legs, in his hands, he didn't recover his overall body strength for maybe 18 months, the amount of weight that he lost. So right now, for me, it's about his overall health. If they can stabilize that, how much are they going to miss him as a football player? Not only is he the best at his position, but he is really the captain of that offensive line. He is the leader. He is the alpha male. He is the guy that gives direction. Their left tackle, Tyrance, he's a very quiet guy, very soft-spoken, doesn't really say much. Their right guard, Martin, he's a great player, but he's not a boisterous guy either. They are relying on Travis for a lot of the verbiage that comes from that offensive line. You got a young quarterback who's going into his third season. Travis is kind of that security blanket to make sure I get into the right protection. So now, Dak, some of that pressure, some of those responsibility will be put on his lap as the veteran quarterback with a younger center now.
I obviously want to echo everything C said about the real life part of this, about wishing Travis the best, hoping. I saw some doctors say, hey, he could be back by the 5th week of the season, but he also could be out the entire year and indefinitely.
Didn't they say that there's a greater chance that he could miss the
year than be back in the first month?
Yes.
This could be a very significant thing for him and his life moving forward, and I don't want to minimize that. On the football side of things, the Cowboys have one of the best left tackles in Tyron Smith. They have one of the best guards in Zach Martin.
Yes.
They have the very best center in Travis Frederick, and that's for pre-snap, the stuff you're talking about, and how about post-snap as well? It's not just his run blocking. What's one of the keys to the Cowboys finding a passing attack this season?
Their screen game.
To Zeke, how much we talked about Zeke wanting to catch more balls.
Yeah. He should catch at least 25 screen passes.
Right. And who's the most important, or one of the most important offensive linemen on that? An athletic center that can get out to the side. And nobody's got depth on the interior offensive line. There's 32 teams. You got, 96 guards and centers in football. There's only like 40 good ones that are starters. Nobody's got really good depth at that position. So this is the Cowboys, when we talk about them, what's their path to being good? Better defense than we would expect, with a good front seven, whatever.
Yes.
Offensively, A-plus offensive line, great running game. Well, this is a huge part of their offensive line out indefinitely, and you can't prepare for this. You can't say, okay, it's 6 to 8 weeks. Like that. This is all of a sudden the Cowboys, which has had a clean offseason, so to speak, have something very significant looming.
And they're going to have serious not continuity as that offensive line. Zach Martin injured, missing a lot of practice. We talked about that last year. Tyron Smith, week after week, missing practice. It affected their productivity of being a dominant line in the running game during the regular season games.
All right, let's move on to Odell Beckham now, who some could say has had a quieter preseason than I have, and I literally did nothing.
Hey,
no joke.
man.
Odell has flown so far under the radar, the Giants are finally closing in on a contract extension. The two sides progressing towards a record-breaking deal for the young receiver. Hearing this could actually get done by the start of the season. CeCe, how important is it to get OBJ's record-breaking deal done by week 1?
I don't think it's that important because, Nick and you and I talking about that, there's certain organizations that have a deadline that they won't negotiate during the season.
Yep.
Now, if the Giants were one of those teams, then we have more pressure. I think that because Odell has done his part, which you mentioned, a quiet offseason, just maybe a breath more active than yourself.
Just barely.
Just what the organization and the company needs. So they're on the same page. The Giants were going to give him a contract. They've almost always said they were going to give him a contract. The only problem was Odell. So them talking and being close to a contract agreement, I believe it's more important because you know what? His demands aren't outrageous. That's the only reason why you can get close. So if you're close, it wouldn't make much difference if they signed it a week into the season, 10 days into the season. They're on the same page. They're moving the right direction. And I've always told you guys, the Giants are an organization. They really try to do the right thing. And signing Odell to a long-term contract would be the right thing.
Because on the field, he's earned it.
Yes.
And now we've seen a couple other guys, his same draft class, who have earned it on the field, and their teams are not doing this. Khalil Mack, his coach won't even talk to him.
Imagine right now if
Pat Sherman, Odell never talked.
had never talked.
I mean, yeah. I mean, we'd probably blame Odell a lot for that, but it would be a disaster.
Yeah. We would have him traded by now. He would have been traded.
Aaron Donald, reigning Defensive Player of the Year. He's about to hold out for his second straight preseason, waiting for a contract. Odell's the same draft class. He's actually scheduled to make less
and
than
both
those.
of these guys have had zero noise off the field. Now, not to try to highlight Odell because the type of player he is, but these guys have had no problems, and they have gotten nowhere from their contract.
And Odell, obviously, and by the way, you take the noise out of it, those guys have never been hurt. Odell just missed a whole season.
Both of them MVPs defensive-wise.
And he's still going to get a contract, it would appear, before them. I talked to Odell this weekend, and the fact that contract stuff didn't come up at all leads me to believe he's confident it's going to get done. That if it was something he was worried about, I feel like it would have come up. Now, I'm of the belief Odell's going to, well, we all know Odell's going to be there, contract or not, if it's the first game of the season. He'll be there. I look at the Giants and I say, okay, you got a stud at running back. You got a stud at wide receiver. I think you have a better than league average tight end about to come into his own. Sterling Shepard to find number 2. You just spent all this money on left tackle, drafted a guard high. The only reason they wouldn't be one of the 5 or 6 best offenses in football would be if Eli regresses further or stays on the path as last year. See, you are not, if you that's not where you're at on them. You're not focusing on Eli. You're focusing on the O-line.
Well, because I've been on a lot of great offensive, and I've had a lot of offensive talent, being running backs, quarterback talent, and wide receivers. And we went through the NFL. We went, I think 6 years in a row, we broke the NFL record where both receivers had 1,000 yards. How much damage did we do in the playoffs? How many of those times were we ranked as one of the top teams in the NFL? Not a whole bunch of the time. The reason why is because when our offensive line was spotty, when we were great, we had great offensive linemen. The Giants, they have huge question marks up and down the offensive line. And just because you signed one tackle in Nate Solder, that does not solve your offensive line problems. Based on his skill set, he is a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker. He is not a mauler, so he is not going to be able to give the type of help that they have with Will Hernandez, the rookie, at the left guard. He's concerned about doing his job. Like, if I look at the teams in the NFC East, he's the 4th best tackle in the NFC East. Trent Williams at Washington is better. We know the tackle in
Tyron Smith and Jason Peters.
There you go.
So see, just real quick on this. You think with Nate Solder, the only reason he's talked about as one of the best tackles is because of the contract. That absent of the contract,
yes,
that we would not consider Peters Nate Solder one of the 5 or even 8 best tackles in the league.
No, he's a good player. He is not a great player. Now, New England, that price tag was going to be too high for them, for them to be able to paying them more money than Tom Brady was not going to happen.
All right, we got to take a break there. Coming up, one more segment. It will be a good one. What do we learn about